Hope you're sticking with me. Let's keep going through this. So they're telepathic. Now, we are clearly not telepathic, okay? We don't communicate with each other in that manner, okay? We are an entirely different creature, aren't we? Okay? These things are more like bees in a hive, okay? They're all like on one level of consciousness. They can move their thoughts to anybody's mind and automatically have all of the information available to them that they want from that being. Okay? Well, you know what? That's an existence that I wouldn't want to live in. Okay? I don't want anybody, jumping in my mind and seeing my private thoughts but God. Okay? I prefer it the way that it is now. We're entirely different creatures. If they are telepathic creatures and they don't speak and there's no secrets between them, that means that they're like all operating as one. Okay, we are individual spirits with free will. Like I said before, people, we are a much higher form of life than, with a lot more potential of growth than any other life form in the universe. And we don't deserve to be treated like this. Okay? So let's continue.
Things in your mind to make you think you're somewhere else or you're doing something else. All their technology is thought activated. They travel dimensions, they travel time, and it's all technology. And I hung on to that these aren't devils, these aren't this. I kept a logical and frame of reference as I possibly could. But right at the beginning, it
was interesting that he would say that he knows that they're not devils. It's an interesting terminology that he used too, isn't it? Like a child. Okay? There's only one devil. Okay? So you're using the wrong word, first of all. And what is your definition of devils, Jim? I bet you don't even understand truly who the devil is, what he's about. Okay? And what his agenda is. Let's continue.
Would you like to be here, or we're this, or we're that? As a matter of fact, my peripheral vision for many months at the beginning was almost completely gone, so I couldn't see who my captives were, or my,
Jim, I would like to ask how you even kept your sanity, and the reason I ask that is going your analogy, going back to Air Force boot camp in San Antonio, there were a lot of people after 3 or 4 days of this. They were screaming, me included, "Mommy, I want to go home. What the hell have I done to myself?" That was, with a good Earth-like, though harsh, frame of reference. You had no frame of reference.
None.
How did you keep from going bananas?
Hate and anger. And I think it's what...
Okay, well, I can see that happening because I have a disease that's a crippling disease called ankylosing spondylitis, and my entire spine has no joints. Where my cartilage was in my spine, it's now been replaced with bone. So I have my spine is essentially one bone. So if I lay down on my back on the floor, like, I can't touch my head to the ground. And I've experienced a ton of pain in my life beyond your wildest imagination. And the effect was anger and hate on me. I'm one mean son of a bitch when I'm hurting, and it's caused me a lot of problems in my life. In other words, the mental part of it, when something scares you or gives you pain, you react. There's a reaction to that. But when you have a disease, or when you're dealing with something like Jim Sparks was, you don't just say, come out everywhere that you are. When you think about it and say, ow, because people will say, what's your problem? So you have to kind of swallow it and keep it to yourself, and what happens is it manifests anger and hate. So I could see that happening, but I have to agree with Art Bell that that had to be pretty tough to make it through. Okay, especially not understanding, anything of what was going on. You're so confused. Okay, let's continue.
Kept 90 at that point, 90%. It got up to 90% of retaining everything in my face that went on. Total hate, and well, I should say total anger and total hate, intense hate and intense anger. I screamed. Well, some of the words I use, but naturally I can't use on the air. Where am I, and who are you, and why am I?
Let me just fill that in there. He's trying to say, where the fuck am I, and who the fuck are you?
Here, and I couldn't even figure out for a second why. But
were you able to vocalize all of this? In other words, if you shouted invectives or whatever, you could actually make a sound, and you could hear that you were making a sound.
Yes, and then my tormentors at the time, I guess you could call them that, would paralyze my vocal cords too. If in there, whatever.
Isn't that like what some people do to dogs when they bark too much and stuff? Put some like an electrical shock on them or something? How cruel can you be? Are we dogs? Are we animals? They can communicate to us. We can have conversations with them. Okay? And we're also more capable than they are. They bow to us. Okay? I can promise you. They see our potential. They fear us. Okay, let's continue.
Enough was enough. But they were really odd. Again, they have no social skills, at least at that time. And now I know they're grays. I couldn't even see what my captains were at the time. It took a few months before I could catch them in my peripheral vision. And they were these, well, what I now know, there's what I call the true grays, which are biological beings. And then there's the worker beings, which I think a lot of people talk about, and they're half biological and they're half robotic, and those are the short ones with the big heads and the giant eyes. I think the eyes are used primarily to soak in any kind of energy source for them to move around, almost kind of like solar panels, so to speak. They take.
All right. At some point, Jim, you went to a very important person. You went to Dr. Mack to help you in dealing with these people, with creatures.
Correct. That was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Proceed. I just wanted to find out how Dr. Mack dealt with you and how he helped you.
Well, Dr. Mack came in. I came into his picture. He came into mine. Oh gosh, I could be off a couple years more or less because this is 18 years of this. Right around 94. So that would have been 88 and 6. Yeah, that would have been like 6 years later. See, because for 6 years I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything. But well, I can tell you about. You were asking me how they made me do things. It was punishment, reward. It was real simple, but I can get into that in a minute.
Okay.
But Dr. Mack came into the picture through. I went to my first abductee support group meeting in right around 95, I think it was, 6, 7 years later, and again, I didn't even know these things were around. And the then director of MUFON for Rhode Island, David Rubian, happened to be at the meeting because he wintered in Florida and he was a friend of Dr. Mack's. And, he was listening, of course, to some of the stories and the experiences, and through David is how I met John. What was really cool about John Mack was just so special.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a pioneer and everything. He had to take the rotten eggs and tomatoes thrown at him, and
I know.
For what
I did a good solid 12, 13 interviews with John Mack, Jim. So I knew him very.
I don't know anything about John Mack, but anyways, let's go to the next one because I don't know how long I'm going on